And we're off to chapter 2! Water! Over 3 months passed since we'd welcomed spring, and the only communication we'd received was a single letter. The Shinsengumi, it read, had suffered an embarrassing defeat against the Imperial Army at Kofu Castle. Later on, this information had proved to be false, as the battle's verdict was yet to be determined. However, Hijikata made it clear to us that they were facing insurmountable odds, and that the conditions for victory were becoming increasingly unfavorable. We held our breaths, nervously waiting for any word of the safe return of our friends and comrades, until finally we had our answer.
ようやく着いたか。
今回ばかりはさすがに死ぬかと思ったぜ。
新八さん、佐野さん、無事だったんだな。
ああ、見ての通りだぜ。
Wait, is it just the two of you who returned? Where are the rest of the men?
撤退するときバラバラになっちまったな。他の大使連中もそのうち戻ってくるはずだぜ。生きてるよな。
ってことは、やっぱり戦には。
全部近藤さんがいけねえんだよ。あの人がいなきゃ負け戦にはならなかったはずなのにな。
俺も新八と同じ意見だ。今回ばかりはさすがに頭抱えちまったぜ。
Both Nagakura and Harada returned with angered spirits, visibly disturbed by what transpired. I could only imagine what happened in Kofu.
平助、土方さんはもう戻ってきてるのか。
まだだけど、甲府で何があったのか一応三男さんに知らせておいた方がいいんじゃないかな。三男さんも戦のことは気になってるはずだから。
だな、そうするか。
Nagakura and Harada both slumped, sighing in unison as we made our way to Sanan's study.
なるほど。状況はよくわかりました。
The events of Kofu were recounted in painstakingly elaborate detail by both Harada and Nagakura. Their side of the story, to our surprise, described a scene far worse than Hijikata-san originally anticipated. Kondo-san insisted on spending a prolonged period of time in Hino, his hometown, delaying their convoy's arrival to Kofu Castle. As a result, the Imperial Army beat our troops there and swept through the site, fortifying the castle before our men were anywhere near the battlefield. If this hadn't presented enough of a disadvantage, the Sacho utilized the same weaponry that handily crushed our forces at Toba Fushimi. Realizing that we may have been marching straight to their deaths, Nagakura and Harada pleaded with Kondo-san in order to order a mass retreat. However, Kondo-san flat out refused, confusing their concern with cynicism. This act of negligence came at the most heinous of costs, leading to the deaths of hundreds of our men serving with his ill-advised command.
もうあの人とはやっていけねえよ。近藤さんは大将の器じゃねえ。
ああ、あの調子で指揮を取られたんじゃ命がいくつあっても足りねえぜ。
別に新選組にいなきゃ薩長と戦えねえってわけでもねえしな。
Both Heisuke and I looked at one another in surprise as soon as Nagakura had said that. Surely Nagakura and Harada wouldn't leave.
早まらないでくださいと言いたいところですが。 すでに心が離れている人を無理に引き止めることもできませんね。お好きにどうぞ。ただ無断でここを出ていくことだけは控えてくださいね。
After offering his counsel, Sanan-san nodded curtly and left for his room.
なあ新八さん、本当に出ていくつもりなのか？
一応近藤さんが戻ってきた後話はするつもりだけどな。
佐野さんも。
近藤さんたちには世話になったし、恩返しして気持ちはあるんだが、これから先もあんなことを繰り返されたんじゃ大使連中にも申し訳ねえしな。
Despite the legitimacy of their concerns, their departure was dependent on Kondo-san's willingness to hear them out. It seemed their hearts were set, and no matter of goodwill or nostalgia could convince them otherwise.
エスケ、お前も俺たちと一緒に来ねえか？
Oh! That's a loaded question, Nagakura.
え？
はっきり言っちまっていいんだぜ。飲みたくもねえ落ち水を飲まされて羅刹になんてされちまって、さすがにもうあの人たちには付き合いきれねえだろ。
このままここにいたらどんな無茶を言いつけられるか分かったもんじゃねえしな。
俺。
Their invitation to leave clearly struck a nerve with Heisuke, who found himself in a position he had likely never anticipated. His gaze trembled slightly, as if he struggled to find a solid answer, and then he pursed his lips.
気持ちだけ受け取っとくよ。
平助、お前。
二人とも誤解してるみてえだけど、俺無理やり落ち水を飲まされたわけじゃねえから。死にそうになった時、三男さんにどうしても生き延びてえかどうか聞かれて、あの薬を飲むって決めたのは俺だから。近藤さんたちのせいじゃねえ。それに羅刹になっちまった俺が新選組を離れるなんてできるはずねえだろ。
そんなの俺が土方さんに掛け合ってどうにでもしてやるって。
いいんだ。あの時せっかく拾った命だから、この命で何ができるのか、ここでもう少し考えてみてえから。
Neither Nagakura nor Harada seemed pleased with his response, both of them scanning him intently.
たくお前は頭が足りねえくせに妙に一本気っつうか。
それ佐野さんにだけは言われたくねえぞ。
何言ってやがんだよ。せっかく誘ってやったのに俺たちの恋を足毛にしやがって。
まあこんな薄情者のことはさっさと忘れちまおうぜ。勝手に一人でくたばりやがるってんだ。
ひってえ言い草だな。なんなんだよもう。
ところで千鶴ちゃん、なんか食うものねえか？ずっと荒木同士だったから腹が減っちまったよ。
Oh, just 1 second. There are plenty of leftovers from supper, so allow me to prepare them for you.
気が利くじゃねえか。当然酒もついてるんだよな。
No, no sake.
なんだよ、固いことは一個なしだろ。せっかく生きて帰ってこられたんだし。
そうそう、ちょっとぐらいならいいじゃねえか。
You too, Heisuke?
こうやって新八さんたちと飲めるのも今のうちだけかもしれねえんだしさ。
As much as I hated to admit it, Heisuke raised a good point that made it difficult to refuse. Fine, but just a little, okay? I think everyone's a little bit on edge, so the last thing I want to do is cause any trouble.
ありがとうよ、千鶴。
Heisuke, Harada, and Nagakura drank well into the wee hours of the morning, laughing boisterously over memories between all of them. On the surface, it was an endearing sight, but I couldn't help but notice the veneer of happiness spread thinly over their conversation, as each of them knew it may very well be their last together. In fact, Heisuke seemed keenly aware of this, offering a sly, pensive glance from time to time. By the next afternoon, some of the other men arrived. Kondo-san, Hijikata-san, Saito, and Soma all returned with their respective troops, and the mood was hushed all around the compounds. Nagakura was quick to approach Kondo-san, hoping to schedule the meeting in which all of his grievances could be properly aired. We waited patiently to see how it turned out when...
そんじゃあみんな世話になったな。他の奴らにもよろしく伝えといてくれ。
So you weren't able to come to a resolution with Kondo-san, huh?
ああ、あの人があそこまで石頭だとは思わなかったぜ。
まあ、石頭はお互い様だろうがな。
お二人がいなくなると寂しくなります。
本当だよな。長倉さんたちには世話になったもんな。夕飯のおかずを取られたり、稽古で散々叩きのめされたり、面倒な雑用を押し付けられたり。
おお、野村、お前も随分皮肉がうまくなったじゃねえか。最後に一発忘れられねえ思い出を作ってやろうか。ああ、
いりませんよ。暴力反対。
そういえば雪村君、東堂君の姿が見えませんが。
Shibata glanced inquisitively around the room. I invited him to join us for the send-off, but all Heisuke said was, "Don't worry about me," and then he left it at that. If you would like, I'd be happy to summon him.
いや、必要ねえさ。別にこれが根性の別れってわけでもねえしな。
But
いいんだよ。あいつに言ってやりてえことは全部夕べのうちに言ったつもりだし。
are you sure about that?
ああ、同じお天道様の下で戦ってりゃ、そのうちまた会えるさ。
I'd hoped that Harada was right, but the sorrow in our parting was anything but sweet. Well, safe travels to you two.
おう、それじゃあな。近藤さんたちのことよろしく頼むぜ。
Nagakura and Harada grinned warmly, seemingly at peace with the decision to move on with their lives. Without another word, they turned their backs to us and walked out of the front gate. As I watched them disappear into the horizon, a feeling of melancholy sat in the pit of my stomach. Although the answer to how much longer Heisuke had to live on account of his affliction was unknown, I still clung to the hope that one day the three of them would reunite, no longer burdened by the troubles that seemed determined to tear them apart. Above us, there was water. No. Above us, the sun was setting, covering the sky with a gorgeous array of orange hues.
あれ
Heisuke awoke from his slumber, stumbling clumsily into the recently vacant room. He just missed Nagakura and Harada's goodbye.
そっか。なんつうかあっけないな。
You should have been here to see them off.
いや、必要ねえよ。一生の別れってわけじゃねえし。縁があれば、また会うこともあるだろうしな。
Strangely enough, Heisuke echoed the same sentiment shared by Harada only moments earlier. Perhaps the truth that none of them had any way of truly knowing whether or not they would live to see one another again was a pain not worth admitting. Instead, they chose to look forward optimistically. A valiant effort, of course, but one that I feared would never come to fruition. Nah, Heisuke, do you really think you made the right choice with not going with Nagakura and Harada? Although the secret that Heisuke was alive, let alone had become a fury, was unbeknownst to the public, I was sure that if Heisuke had wanted to, Hijikata-san would entertain the option of him leaving the Shinsengumi favorably.
ああ、俺はここでやらなきゃならねえことが残ってるから。
Like what? Heisuke went silent, pondering to himself as he scratched the bridge of his nose.
ある人のことが心配なんだ。あのまま新八さんたちと一緒に新選組を出ちまったら、そいつのことを見捨てることになっちまうから。そうなったら俺、きっと死ぬまで後悔すると思う。
Passion glowed in his wide, tender eyes. Staring deeply into them made my chest tighten for some reason, like my heart had been beating twice as fast. Surely the person Heisuke had been worried about was... me? I thought about whom it could have been, and although I may have been overthinking things, something hit me. I recalled an intimate conversation we shared as we left Osaka Bay, following the events of Toba Fushimi. Between joining the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb, leaving the Shinsengumi, and drinking the Water of Life, I choose number 5. It was a period of change, reflection, and unforeseen consequences for Heisuke, but he confided in me that my presence gave him the confidence to see through it all. So logically, I thought it must have been... the person you're talking about... is it me?
え、あ、いや、俺はそんな...
Oops. Sorry, that was wrong of me to assume. Right? How could it be me, of course? My deepest apologies. I think I may have gotten ahead of myself. How embarrassing.
いや、違わねえし!
Heisuke's cheek turned deep red, and he cupped his mouth with his hands almost immediately. He stood frozen to the spot, and for a moment, an awkward, ear-shattering silence filled the room. Well then... So, I was right, wasn't I? The person you're worried about is me. Heisuke scratched timidly at his rosy cheeks, looking extremely uncomfortable as I continued to press the subject until...
おう、まあそういうことだよ。
But why in the world are you worried about me? I'm not going through anything near the level of what you're dealing with, Heisuke.
俺は別にいいんだよ。男だし、戦えるしさ。新選組にも自分で望んで入隊したんだし。でも、お前は違うだろ。
Heisuke. Heisuke had always acted so selflessly. His thoughtful gestures, though flattering, made me feel a tad guilty as he never put himself first. For now, expressing my gratitude would have to do. Thank you, Heisuke. Your concern means the world to me. Heisuke's gentle disposition was unlike anyone I had ever met before, a fact I cherished quite dearly.
そういや、三男さんは今 どうしてるんだ？
You know, I haven't seen him since last night.
本当か？まさか勝手にどこかへ出かけてるんじゃねえだろうな。俺ちょっと様子を見てくる。
Are you going to be okay by yourself?
ガキ扱いするなよ。じゃあちょっくら行ってくるから。
Heisuke had one foot out of the door when... Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached round 3. He slammed to his knees, desperately moaning in pain. His hair began slowly turning white, and his eyes were burning savagely with a fiery crimson. Heisuke? Was this bloodlust?
やっぱりあの二人についていかなくて正解だったかもな。
And say this with me now. We give him blood. I knew that offering him my fresh blood would be enough to soothe his excruciating pain. Without a second to hesitate, I unsheathed my kodachi as Heisuke clawed at his chest uncontrollably. I grimaced as I slid the cold steel across my wrist. Heisuke, drink my blood.
だけどそんな。
This doesn't hurt me. Just please, for my sake. After giving it a moment of thought, Heisuke wrapped his soft, moist lips around my bleeding wound. He muttered to himself sheepishly, sucking the blood from my cut in a gingerly manner.
お前に痛い思いをさせて、化け物みたいに血をすすらねえと正気じゃいられねえなんて。
Don't think about that right now. Just focus on getting better. Heisuke nodded curtly, facing his head downwards as he sucked with more vigor. After a few minutes, Heisuke's breathing began to steady itself, and the pressure of his mouth lessened. Look at that. Your complexion looks better already.
みたいだな。
Heisuke averted his gaze bashfully, perhaps stuck in a thought loop about his internal dilemma.
お前大丈夫なのか？俺に血なんて飲ませて立ちくらみとかしてねえか？
Nope, this is nothing. All that matters to me is that I'm able to be there for you when you need me. Heisuke fell silent, nervously biting into his lower lip while thinking of something to say.
俺三男さんの様子を見てくる。
He shot up from the floor, then disappeared from the room as if the place had caught on fire.